So it's always nice to see some new players in the addressable arena, willing to push the boundaries beyond what we're used to. The BlueGhozt controller has gotten us a long way in making addressable LEDs more functional on a car, but obviously, as with any technology such as this, it's only a matter of time before other options come available. And that's where GlowCraft comes in. GlowCraft has created a new controller that has many functions and features that we have not yet seen in this space. The guys over at Current Labs, creators of the GlowCraft controller, reached out to me a few months ago about possibly checking out our new controller, and was a little bit skeptical to begin with. I do get a lot of emails from companies claiming to have the best new products, and they usually don't pan out. But this was an exception, and once I finally did respond to their emails, got a little bit more information about the controller, and they offered to send me one my way. And as soon as it came in, I did start playing with it a little bit. I saw a lot of potential in it, and I had a customer that wanted to get a set of taillights built that the GlowCraft controller was a really good match for. So it took me a few months to get to that build, a lot of stuff on my plate, but I've been working with the guys over at Current Labs for the past few weeks and giving them feedback on the controller, and they've been updating the firmware, and I think it's to a point now where it's quite functional for the purposes that we need them for automotive use. Obviously, this is still somewhat in development, sort of. No doubt, as with every new controller and every new device, there are some bugs that are probably still going to pop up that have to be worked out, but their response has been very good to any issues that I have run across. And in many cases, they have a firmware update within 24 hours. So I'm not saying an update will always come out that fast, but just the turnaround time that I've seen over the past several weeks has been very good, and it's come quite a long way. Now, initially, it did a lot of stuff, but there was just some fine-tuning and tweaking for the automotive side that needed to be done, and that's been done. Now, I think I've got a fully functional controller, and this set of lights is ready to go in a car. Now, this video is not going to be an in-depth coverage of the controller. Quite frankly, I think there's still a few bugs that we want to work out, and before I launch an official video that fully goes over the controller, I do want to try to make sure that we have it as good as it can be, and it's pretty darn close. But in this one, it's going to be rough overview, give you guys an idea. We are going to be putting up pre-orders for these controllers at the launch of this video, which will be Saturday the 19th. And they will be available on nextlevelneo.com with a tentative release date of November 1st. And we're hoping that that all pans out still. Nothing changes there, but we are currently on track for that. So if you want to get a hold of one of these controllers, that would be a great opportunity to go ahead and do that. We do have a limited quantity of them coming in at this point, but we will be getting more in as time goes on. As with anything that is more technologically advanced, it does cost a premium, so there is a little bit more money to it. I'm not going to drop the price right here just in case prices change in the future, but you can see it on the website, and it is most definitely more than a Ghost controller. Now, I did want to go over the controller itself just to give you guys a better idea of what you're actually getting for that money. The GlowCraft controller is compatible from 5 volts to 24 volts, so perfect for most automotive application. It does have an auto shutdown feature, which turns off the controller when not in use to help save battery life. There is an iOS and Android app. Currently, they are a little bit buggy. That's one of the things that's getting worked out, but once again, as with everything else, it's coming along quite quickly. So by the time you see this video, the bugs have probably already been worked out. The controller has 2 internal 5-volt power outputs that are capable of up to 4 amps each, for a total of 8 amps. Now, these are on a switch as well, so when the controller goes into standby mode, these power sources turn off, once again cutting your power draw. So very similar to what we are using on the power savers for the BlueGhozt and other controllers. This one does have it integrated. The biggest factor with that, do keep in mind, that is 4 amps for each channel. So you will have to figure out what your load rating is going to be on the LEDs that you're using, but there is actually a pretty good calculator within the application itself that will give you a ballpark idea, and in the event that you do overload one of the power supplies, it will just cut out on you. So it will be application specific as to whether or not you can use those inverters. I know myself, most of the time I'm exceeding that rating, so I'm probably going to put inverters inside the lights still. But, you know, this is very early on, and I'm sure in many builds I will have the opportunity to use those built-in inverters, and it is a very nice feature to see. In the case of my own build that I just did on these tails, they are well beyond the 4 amp limit, and I ended up using one of those power supplies to activate my relay on the power saver, and that works just like using a Ghost Plus. There are 8 total input triggers. With the BlueGhozt, you have 6 being your DRLs, brakes, reverse, EXT, and both turn signals. You do have 2 additional on this controller that can be used for any number of things, and they do function quite differently, as you will see, than what the BlueGhozt controller does. You can pretty much assign these to do whatever you want them to do. All 8 of those triggers are activated with any signal from 5 volts clear up to 24 volts, so that will also address issues like cars that run 6 volt to the high beam for your DRL. There are 6 outputs on the GlowCraft controller. There are 6 output channels on the GlowCraft controller, each capable of 1,000 LEDs, for a total of 6,000 LED capability. They are also working on a duplexer that will actually convert those 6 outputs to 30 outputs. That will be an additional product that you would purchase to add on to create more channels within your car. So if you are looking for a one controller solution for a very large build, this is going to be a really good option, and that will help to offset the cost difference between something like a Ghost controller. And even better yet, it does have the capability of controlling multiple LED types and color orders on the same controller. So you can have RGBW mixed with RGB in a GRB format, RGB format, RGBW, GRBW, all on the same controller without any issues. This controller does also have an audio line input, so you can connect this to speakers on a car or something else. There is no microphone built in specifically, but it is made to integrate with a stereo or something like that within your car. And there are many animators within the application that will take advantage of this feature. It is currently compatible with most addressable LED types. UCS is not on the list currently, but that will get added, and it is compatible with UCS as it is. You just use the SK6812 with a GRBW color type to make it work with the UCS, and it works fine. Now, the interface to connect with the controller is Wi-Fi. Normally we're using Bluetooth on most of these controllers, but it's something that a lot of people have issues with BlueGhozt, SP controllers, things like that are on the Bluetooth, is a range problem, and that is addressed being that they switched to a Wi-Fi on this. So while typically Bluetooth is a little bit more standard, the Wi-Fi and the way that they've implemented it within the app, it's pretty seamless and it works well, and you have a good range, which is a big factor for a lot of people. Another huge feature that this controller brings is Canbus integration. Now, if you're not familiar with that, Canbus is part of the communication system within most modern cars. So you can actually use this to connect to the computer in the car, and it can pull many different signals from your turn signals, your DRLs, your brakes, door triggers, a whole mess of different things. And what's really cool, while it only has 8 triggers, which that's quite a few, the Canbus system allows you to pull 30 different triggers from different points within the car's computer. So you can actually control quite a bit more if you do tie in with the Canbus system. Now, if you do decide to go that route, you're kind of going to be on your own trying to figure out which wires to tap into on Canbus. Each car is going to vary, and by all means consider you are tapping into your car's computer. So you definitely want to know what you're doing, have a good idea of what you're doing, and understand that doing that, you are taking a risk that something bad could happen. Now, having said that, I myself will be playing with this feature at some point, but the controller itself is so overwhelming already, and just all the features and everything that it does, that I have not made it to the Canbus stage yet. There will be an entirely separate video for that, I guarantee you. Now, I don't have an extra controller here. The one I have is already made. It's hooked up to the lights over on the other side over there. But the controller itself is IP67, meaning that you can put it under the hood of the car. You don't need to pot it. You do not need to do any waterproofing on it. It will be perfectly fine under the the hood of your car. If it gets wet, it's not a big deal. It is not made to be submersed in water, but a little bit of water coming in contact, splashing on it under the hood will not be a problem, assuming that the case does stay intact and is not cracked or smashed open. You shouldn't have any issues. And much like the BlueGhozt controller, it is designed in the USA by a US company. And there is a lot of benefits to that. As with most of the SP controllers and a lot of the companies out of China, they can design some really cool stuff, but they don't fully understand what it is that we need. And sometimes the language barriers and getting them to do things can be difficult. And that is one benefit I've always loved about BlueGhozt and Ghost in general. I can reach out to the guys over there, I can give them input, and usually they're quite receptive to that. And the same has been true, without a doubt, with GlowCraft. If I reach out and I have an issue, they're quick to address it and quick to try to find a solution. So there is a huge benefit to that over a lot of the other controllers that you see overseas. Now, the controller is sold by itself, but you will need 2 DTM connectors, and they are very specific connectors. We will be selling them here on the site, so you can order it all together. But if you want to try to save a few dollars, you can source your own. So that's most of the specs on the controller itself. Let's go ahead and jump in the app and get a feel for the layout. Now, for initial setup, you're going to want to either have a computer or a tablet to set everything up. It's not ideal at all and won't even come up on an average cell phone, just to the complexity of the app. So a tablet will work. That is what I'm using here. Is just a Galaxy Tab S9, and anything of that similar size should work fine. Resolution is a factor here. The first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and connect to the Wi-Fi signal. So you'll go ahead and connect to your GlowCraft controller, which will show up in your Wi-Fi selection. Do keep in mind that when you wire it up, you do have to activate the controller by triggering one of the triggers on the controller. And there's going to be more information on that. I do highly recommend, once you get the controller in, to read over the manual. I will put a link on our website, and there is a link on GlowCraft's website to that. It is a really good tool to have and reference to in the event that you do have any issues or concerns. It can address most of them in that manual. So you're going to connect to the GlowCraft controller, and the password is current LA, and that's all in lowercase and no spaces in between, and that will connect you to the controller. Once you connect to the controller, the interface will pop up and it will give you an option to be a user or an installer. Now, obviously for initial setup, you're going to want to choose installers, and that will pop up the status screen. Now on the status screen, you can see some pretty cool information, like your current active shows, your active events. And the active events are the actual triggers themselves, so you can determine which trigger is currently active. I've got input 1 active, which I currently have pinned to my startup DRLs, and that's why it's showing up under active shows. You can also look at your configuration for your panel count and your configuration data channel count. So that means that right now I'm using 3 channels, and I have 3 panels on those channels. So what I have right now is fairly simple, but still pretty complex. I'm truly only scratching the surface of what this thing can do. Scroll down a little bit further and you can see your data count. So my current data channels, I am using 778 data addresses. That is out of a 6,000 total. That means I have a remaining 5,222 addresses available to me. And then you have your pixel count. Pixel counts obviously being that RGB LEDs have 3 pixels and RGBWs have 4, so it just splits that number up a little bit different. You can scroll further down, you can see your firmware vision, your device ID, that's like your MAC address, your secret ID inputs. You can see which inputs are active. I currently have input 1 is active. Your power supply voltage, you can verify how much power you have coming in. The temperature of the controller itself, and the current amp draw on each of your power supply circuits. Those are the 5-volt circuits that we were talking about. A whole bunch of other stuff here. I don't even honestly know half of this. They've covered it all, but I'm going to tell you, it was a lot, because this thing does a lot. I should have mentioned it. This is not for somebody that's looking for a really quick solution. This is something for somebody who wants to really dial in their lights to do something that blows people's minds. And, you know, with that, it's not going to be a quick process. If BlueGhozt is intimidating, This is going to be a step up from that, but it's to be expected given the amount of power that this controller has. It's going to be a little bit busy on the amount of settings that you can change. That's where the really cool part comes in with the app, because if we go through here and I'm going to show you all these settings, I would never want to hand this over to a customer and tell them to go in here and do all this stuff, because it's going to be a nightmare for me later. But that's the beauty of how they set this up. They add the application for the customer. The customer doesn't ever see any of this unless they pull up a web browser and go in and connect manually. For the most part, they'll just pull up an app on their phone that's pretty simple and locks them out of most of the settings that you don't want them touching. We'll go ahead and hop over to the data channel side. This is where you're actually going to set up each of the 6 channels that you have coming out of the controller. Now I'm just using 3, and you can see I choose my pixel types for each, my color order for each, and the pixel count for each. And that will set them up. And you can go in here and show controls. That'll actually allow me to turn it to solid color, so you can verify that you've got all that set up right. And it does actually estimate the max amp draw that you will see based upon the LED type and the quantity that you choose. Now, this is an estimate, so definitely consider that in any applications where you might be using inverters or things like that to try to figure out what you actually will need. In a case of 12.5 amps, I mean, that's really only if you're running full white. So that number will be a variable depending on the circumstances. Up at the top, you can see where we have a total system current required of 37.3 amps. Once again, giving us a ballpark idea of the max draw that you will see being up to 37.3 amps. Now that is also at 5 volts, so 12 volts, it will be a little bit lower. Moving over to panels, now this is where you're going to create your matrices, and the matrix setup is pretty cool because it gives you the ability to create a grid that is not uniform. So in a lot of controllers with grids like BlueGhozt, it does have to be a square grid, so you have to have so many lines tall and so many LEDs across for it to work properly. And that's something that in my last video we kind of covered the idea of how to work around that system to make it work for what you're building. And with this one, you can get a little bit more creative in how you go about it. So if you were to add a panel, you do have to create a panel name, and you would create a grid, something like this, and you can change the number of pixels wide by the number of pixels tall, and you can create a different layout then. So let's say we want a 20 by 10. So that gives us 20 by 10 there, and just keeping in mind that your first row is 0. So 0 through 19, that's 20 total. Now, we'll go over to our empty pixels tab. Now that is where we get a select. So let's say that we've got something that's maybe a little bit more rounded on the corners possibly, and that's where 5mm panels and things like that come in with this, because you can create different designs and shapes to work like that. Now there will be in the future some implementation of halos and strips and things like that in a more user-friendly manner, but as it is right now, you can create those halos and strips in this block section. And one way that you might do that, let's say we'll go back to panel dimensions, let's change that to a 10 by 10, and we'll go to our empty pixels, and let's just say that the X's we're disabling those. So that might be a halo there, and while it looks a little bit blocky, it will actually work pretty well as a halo. So that gives you an idea of a grid that you could create, and then you got your pixel data mapping. And I'm not going to get into this too much. I'm starting to get down into the weeds a little bit on this. This controller is busy. There's a lot to it, and I don't want to put it all in one video. I am going to try to split it up. But this gives you a rough idea of the actual panel creation tool within it, and just how intricate it can be and how much customization you actually have within it. So you just hit create panel, go ahead and give it a name, and then it's good to go. This is your Canbus section. I honestly don't know much at all about it. I haven't even touched that section yet, so I'm going to skip over that. We'll touch that one later. here are your bitmaps. Now, bitmaps are pretty cool because bitmaps are an opportunity for you to create special shapes. It can be letters, it can be pictures, it can be whatever you want, and it's basically just like a light bright system where you put a pin in each little section and you create the own shape that you want. And I have created quite a few. That's actually where I did a lot of the animations that I created on the lights that I built. And one really cool thing about these is that you can save them and put them on other controllers. So you can back all this information up, put it on another controller, and you can sort of, as a builder, create your own custom and unique playlists and shows and animations that you can use on your own controllers. Or if you do it the way I like to do it, create stuff and share it with the community so that they can all use it too. So that's a really cool feature here where a lot of the hard work is going to be done and shared. I'm going to share all my stuff with anybody, so I'll be putting most of these files online at some point once I feel like I have a reasonable amount. And that way anybody that just wants to get this thing up and running can download my files, load them up to their controller, and make them work. Now, that's within certain understandings. You know, some of my bitmaps I have adjusted to the lights that I built because they're not perfectly square. So when I get a square set, I think that's when I'm going to go back and actually create these panels and then share them. The ones that I created for these lights probably wouldn't look right on a square panel. So I probably won't share them unless somebody's got an S2000 with these exact same panels. It probably won't work real well for you. But same deal, you can change your width and your height of the panels. You want a 20 by 20, whatever you're running, you can create that and you give it a name. And then at the bottom there, you click Create Bitmap, and that will save it to the bitmaps list. Now, I've created quite a few myself, and you can see the widths. You can see the height, you can edit, you can delete, you can do whatever you need to do there. Palettes. Now, palettes is color palettes. So, like I created a July 4th one that's red, white, and blue. And you can do Christmas colors, you can do other things like that. And that's just a quick way to create your own palettes. So, you remember within the BlueGhozt, you would create a show mode, and then you could select up to 6 different colors for that show mode. So, it's laid out very simple and easy to access. This is the same system, just you're creating these palettes that can be used across multiple show modes, and you would create those show modes, activate them when you want. So pretty cool feature, pretty cool capability. I haven't even really scratched the surface on that much, but it's also not too complex of an idea. Pick your colors, create a palette, name it, save it, use it in your show mode creation. Next up is the show mode tab. Now, as you can see, I've created quite a few, and I have been playing quite a bit. So you can see quite a few settings in here. Many of these are probably trash, honestly, because they were just kind of like experimentation, and I created a new one. But they're pretty cool. We'll show you real quick the layout for the show mode creator. You have your name, your priority. Priority determines if a trigger is activated to make the show mode work, what priority does it take? So does this show mode take priority over another show mode or over another trigger? So with the Ghost controller, it's automatic. Your DRLs, your brakes, your turn signals, they all have preset priorities that you can't change. Whereas with this, you can change that. And that number, I don't even know if there's a max to it. I don't know. I went clear up to 5. I would imagine. I know you can go into double digits. So there's quite a few different priorities that you can set. If there is a benefit to that, you can go clear up to 10, maybe even 20. I don't know offhand, but it can go quite a bit high. And then your triggers, you can choose if all triggers are activated. So you can choose all and say that when 1 and 2 both are active, I want this to play this show mode. But if only 1 is active and only 2 is active, by themselves, they will not play it. So it gives you that functionality, the ability to make it work how you want it to work. And all of these ways to make the controller do unique things that, I get people asking me all the time, is like, well, can I do this? Can I do that with the Ghost controller? And a lot of times you can get creative. You can do a lot of different things. This one here, I think this just gives you so much more ability to get super creative. So that's really cool. And you have all the activities here. You got active or inactive and frequency. So you can set it to where this show mode only turns on if the DRL is off. You can set it to where it will only turn on frequency. So frequency would be one where, like a turn signal. Turn signal is on, off. So frequency would be to say that if it's sensing that it's turning on and off, that it will turn on and stay on. So some cars actually have duty cycles. That would be a great example of that there too as well. So if you have a duty cycle on a car, like a brand new Ford F-150 or something like that, you can run that input one frequency, and that means it will overcome that duty cycle that a lot of lights are starting to use now. Beyond that, you also have your exclusion, and that would mean that in the event that any one of those triggers are active, it will not turn on. So you have quite a few different options there as far as triggers for each show mode that you create. And then the show mode creation itself is over here. Now you have panels. You can choose between the panels that you've created as to which panel does what. So with the BlueGhozt, when you choose a show mode, you create it really quick. You pretty much click create show mode, it starts playing a show mode, and you can choose from the drop downs. It's a lot more simple, but this one here, it's going to be a little bit more complex. There's a little bit more to it. So you're going to choose a panel. You're going to create a layout. You can add multiple layers to this show mode. You can create different show modes within. You got all these different options. These are called animators, and they do many different things. I'm not going to cover it here. There's just so much to it. And you can stack them on top of each other, and each animator does something unique. And when you have a strobe, so let's say you go with a swirl or a trippy show mode, and you put a strobe over top of it, it'll make the animation strobe, and you can stack the layers and things. You have rain, pulse, power supply switch, Pong, marquee. Marquee is for that would be a way to bring in some of your bitmaps. Flow, glowworms, fire, fill, fade. DVD is more bitmaps. Banner is bitmaps, bitmap stack. Just so many different modes, and you really just have to play with them to understand what they do and to play with putting them together. I guarantee you, no matter how good you get at this controller, somebody will at some point blow you away with what they did with it. That's the cool thing about the controller. As I learn more and more about it, I realize just how little I actually understand about it, because there's so much to it. So I can do the most basic stuff without a ton of work. Obviously you do need to grasp the software somewhat, and just consider, this is not something you're going to throw a light together real quick and use this controller for the first time. This is something you're going to want to play with, experiment with, and get good with it before you commit to building a light fast. Tell your customers, going to be the guy with these S2000s has been waiting a long time for me to get this, because I told him I need to learn this controller first so that I make sure that I'm not leaving anything on the table. It's going to be the same thing with this. So just keep that in mind, because there's just so much that you can do with it. You can change the time period, the length, you loop. You got your layer count. It has your total number of seconds. You'll hit save. Make sure you put a title on it. Once again, this will be covered in more detail in a future video. I may even do one video for each page, each tab within this app, just because of how complex each one is. And you know me, I like to go into detail. This video is already probably super long, and we're just kind of scratching the surface here. So moving on to settings. Now settings, you can use this to act as an access point. That is the way that I'm going to use it. In most automotive applications, that's probably the way you're going to want to use it, because the other option is to connect to a local network. So if you are within a house, that would be beneficial. If you're in a house and you're using it for Christmas lighting or something like that, you might want to connect it into your Wi-Fi to make it a little bit easier to connect to it. But in most cases, I think you're going to want it to act as an access point. Basically, that just means that you're going to connect directly to the controller from whatever device and control it in that manner. And if you're at a car show or you're out and about, obviously you don't have access to your home Wi-Fi. So that option, I think, is ideal. You got a whole bunch of timing settings, and that's the startup length, shutdown length, power off time, idle time, frequency input, time out, and I will cover that stuff in more details. You get the gist of what it probably does. We'll cover it in more detail on another video. Miscellaneous. Now this is where you will activate your power supply unit. So in the event that you are using a power saver like I am, and you're running that to one of the power supply outputs, you're going to want to make sure that those are active for the power supply to activate. So those are going to need to be turned on, and once again, they only turn on in the event the controller is on. Once the triggers are disconnected to the controller will go into a deep sleep mode, and it will turn off that power supply, or those the 5-volt power supplies and the relay that you have connected to it. You get your battery alarm voltage. You can set that to go off in the event that power drops to a certain level. I honestly haven't played with that enough to know exactly how it warns you about that, but that feature is there, which is pretty cool. And you have your configuration file backup and load section. So basically with these, you can download your data channels, panels, and color palettes. You download that into one file. Your shows, you can download into one file. Your CAN signals into one file, and your settings into one file. And once again, this is a way to, one, back up all of your settings, and I've been doing that a lot. And it is also a way for you to share settings. So in the event that you want to share it with somebody else, you can do it that way. And I think it's going to give us a lot of options. Now, they are also going to be implementing a backup mode on other sections. I know the show modes were one that we talked about, and I do believe that we were going to be doing that on the panel section as well, with the idea that, you know, in a case of an S2000, if you were to build a set of S2000 tails exactly like mine, I could theoretically share you all of these settings to save you the time of having to set it up yourself. So you know, that is an option that we'll have down the line, to be able to share that in somewhat of a user sharing system. But, you know, at the same point, if you want to have your trademark, you're a builder, you put the time into creating a special show mode that does something really crazy, you can save that, and that can be your signature. And the only way people can get it is if they come to you and have you build them a set of lights using a GlowCraft controller, and you can put that show mode on their lights that nobody else has access to. So that's a pretty cool feature that they have in there. Now, the last section we do have here is the safe mode. Safe mode is for firmware updates, and you're going to be seeing a lot of firmware updates over the first several months of this being out. I can already tell you. I've been working with them a good bit. We've updated the firmware a lot, and it has gotten to a very good point where I think the controller's solid. But with as receptive as they are to new information, I'm sure there will be more firmware updates. Probably not on a daily basis, but I would say, you know, monthly, bi-monthly for sure. There will be some updates, and more than likely it will be a collective amount of changes that were made at the request of users. So if you want to be a part of helping to shape this controller to what it's going to turn into, it's a great opportunity to pick one up, play with it, and give your input. Quite honestly, it is a cool controller. I can't wait to get my shipment in and play with more of them. Right now, I've only got the one, and it is currently on that set of lights over there, but I have been playing. I have been doing some pretty cool stuff, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we've done. So I'm going to go over there and get the lights turned on and show you what I've done with this S2000 setup so far. And so far, I'm pretty happy with it. I think we're ready to go ahead and install it on the car, and it should turn some heads, but we're going to go ahead and get that going, and that way you guys can see a little bit of a taste of what you can do. And once again, keep in mind, these panels were not designed for this kind of thing. These panels were designed by Lumisthetic, I think, designed them many years ago, and they are not a uniform grid. So keep that in mind when you watch this. I am going to be getting a much more uniform grid and building it and having it for better testing purposes, for creating files to share, and probably for future videos. That way it does look more symmetrical. So please understand the non-symmetrical aspect of some of these shapes that I've created is not a feature of the app as much as it is a drawback of the unsquare panels. They're not squared. They're designed to have a look and shape to them that is not uniform to a matrix setup like this. So just keep that in mind. But we'll go ahead and get them going and give you guys a taste of what to expect. Now, first up is our startup animation. And I just tried to spell out start with a little bit of a border there. You can see a little flash, and then it goes to half bright. Up next, you have your brakes, and I did try to spell out stop on them, do something a little bit kind of different. And then you've got the turn signals. I'm just going to do the one side just to give you guys kind of an idea. I did create that bitmap to flow across the screen. So once again, I fully expect some of you guys to blow me away with what you create. This is just my first rendezvous with this controller. By no means do I think I have achieved the limits of what can be done here. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what some of you guys create. But I'm pretty happy with it. I think it looks good. And next up, I've got the reverse lights. Now, this is where, you definitely want to keep in mind, if you just turn on all the LEDs at full bright, you're probably going to overload a 10 amp inverter, because that's a lot of LEDs, much like it would be with the Ghost. And you don't necessarily need that many. So as you can see there, I just spelled out back off with an exclamation point, and I think it gets the point across. It should light up behind the car pretty well. I think it looks pretty cool. So, hey, there you go. I did tie in the battery saver into one of the triggers so that I could activate show modes with the A button. So the B button itself I am not using. I did disable that on the power saver itself. And that is, the relay itself is being activated by the controller. So it does turn on and off automatically, which is nice. But I do have the A button still, and I do have the remote. And so in the event that my customer decides that he wants to go ahead and activate the show modes really quick without having to pull up the app, all he's going to do is push the A button, and these are some of the modes that I put together. Now, as you can see, the taillights themselves are running some pretty basic modes. These are unmodified stock modes. The only things I did was like mirror them and affect the direction that they're going so that they look a little bit more uniform. But these are basic modes. There's your Galaxy Tails mode right there, and a bunch of other different modes that I thought looked pretty cool for a show mode. And once again, this is not layering. This is literally just taking the existing show mode, the existing animators, and running them in. Now this one's called View. Now this one would work with your audio input if you had that connected, so that is pretty cool. And it will respond to audio input in the event that you do use that feature of the controller and tie it in with anything. That would look pretty cool. And you also see the panel in the middle there, that round one. And the round one is where I used the bitmap to create a few animations. And I have them cycling in a rotation manner. So that I used one of the inputs on Banner, the Banner animator, and then I chose the bitmaps that I created, which tried to, familiar shape there for some of you guys. And then I turned on the option to rotate, which is something that was actually just added this week. And that allows it to have somewhat of an animated look. And it actually wasn't too difficult to create that using those settings. So, this kind of goes back to the better you understand the controller, the more you're going to be able to do. That actually didn't take too long to create. And, it just changes the cycles and colors, and, your imagination is whatever you want to make of it. Now, we are working on a few other little components that they're going to have that come out alongside of these controllers. So it's going to be a little bit down the line before some of this stuff comes out beyond that, like the duplexer that I was talking about, as well as some other things that we've been talking about that I don't want to spill the beans on, and I'll let them do that if they choose to. But I am very excited to see what this company brings out. This is by no means their one and only release. They are planning on releasing quite a few things, and they've even suggested some stuff that blew my mind in just the creativeness that they are bringing to this. So definitely look forward to some of the creations from current labs out there in California. Definitely some ambitious guys over there doing some really cool stuff. So Hopefully this gave you a taste of what the GlowCraft controller can do and what to expect from it coming forward. Now, this is not a cheap controller, and it's not meant to be. It's not supposed to be. If you got a customer that insists they want an SP, give them the SP. If you got a customer that's willing to upgrade to the Ghost, give them the Ghost. But you know, you have to understand that if you're not willing to spend the money for the best stuff, then you're not going to get the best stuff. So it's that kind of thing. It's like, yes, the controller is more expensive, but it also, once again, can do far more. It can replace what you might have to have 10 other controllers for, it can do with one. So that's another factor. If you have a big build, big car with a lot of lighting on it, this might be a great way to do it. If you love the idea of Canbus integration where you can pull signals from multiple sections of the car, this can do that. As with everything, though, this is going to have some learning curves because it is more complicated. This is not an SP105E. You're not going to pull up the app and choose from 200 different show modes and then it just goes. This is going to be the kind of thing where you can create really unique, really sophisticated lights that are going to win awards, take over shows, and, you know, quite honestly, as a builder, allow you to go to levels that we've never seen before. So I'm definitely excited to see what comes down the line. BlueGhozt is still going to be a big part of my builds. The SP controllers are no doubt going to be a really good match for many builds and many cars. So you know, it's going to be a application-based scenario, but if you consider the idea of good, better, best, GlowCraft is definitely falling along the lines of best. They're going to do everything that every controller under them can do, and then a lot more. So it's definitely something to consider. I would absolutely encourage everyone to pick one up to just get a feel for the controller and see what it can do. I do have limited quantities, but more will be coming in. I'm doing the pre-sale so I can get a ballpark idea of how many more I need to order. So hopefully we can have them ready to go before launch. So if we do sell out on the pre-orders, we'll be working pretty hard to try to make sure that we have more lined up so that we can get them out to you guys as soon as possible. But definitely looking forward to these controllers and definitely looking forward to what you guys do with them. So if you found this video helpful, and if you want to learn more about GlowCraft controllers in the future videos, definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of those videos coming up. This is going to be a large segment of videos. There are going to be many separate videos for this controller, and as I learn more, videos will probably have to be recreated covering different aspects, and that's just, you know, part of what this controller and its capabilities. I'm going to try to share what I find along the way with you guys, and hopefully you guys can get something from it and maybe share some stuff that you learned along the way with me. I do appreciate it, guys. Make sure to check out nextlevelneo.com for all your LED lighting needs. Thanks.